Ms. Mkonase will respond to what is relevant to her, and then we'll do Professor Kleinhaus, and we'll finish with Dr. Guma. In that sequence.
Thank you, Program Director. The first question I will respond to is the one on the medals that Program Director, Facilitator asked. What does it mean, the fact that they found the medals in Summers Town? And what it means is, for me, as the asset manager, is how many medals have we lost, is the first question, and did not recover. That's the first question. And at this point, I'm not sure we have the visibility of that because we didn't have an asset register that has the assets. And it's a combination of factors as well, because what it is also saying is that the members that were in that museum were alert enough to be able to realize that there's something missing. If our members are not alert to realize that there's something missing, then we also have the same challenge where we're losing medals, and they are valued at huge amounts of money in the black market. And so that's why it's important that in the museums we place people that have a passion for maintaining our military heritage, so that they can be alert to make sure, because it's not only the medals, there's many other artifacts that are sitting in our museum that could be worth a lot in terms of money in the black market. So that is my response on I hope it answers the question. And the issue of the royalties on the song, no, there's no intention of monetizing the song because it's only used in the military. But it is an asset. It may be an intangible asset, but it is an asset. It is used on parades for the general salute only. It cannot be used anywhere else. And on the issue, someone asked about the strategy and indicated that we need to have a strategy. Yes, I agree with that. We need to have a strategy because military heritage can be very wide. And we need to caution it in terms of who handles what and make sure that we are capacitated as a department to make sure that we handle the issues of strategy. And there was something else about the archives. I wrote the archives. I just wanted to make a point that archives are also assets and they are in the asset register of the department. Thank you. I think I've answered all the questions.
Thank you. There's a couple of points, and I'll just broadly address them. So, in terms of the digitization of the archive, there has been projects before. When I worked there was a project by Manico, a company, a third party that came in. And the idea was to start scanning all of the personnel files from 1950 going forward. But you can imagine how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people served since 1950. So I don't think they even finished the surnames that started with A. And I think that project has since ceased. What I do know is at the moment they're busy with, there's another project where they're scanning Second World War service cards. But leveraging institutional or external partners, I think sometimes here we skip the beat. Professor Johan Fourie from Stellenbosch University had the funding to digitize, scan and digitize and hand over the entire First World War collection in terms of personnel cards. And that was rejected at the time. For what reasons, I do not know. Okay, so sometimes I think, you know, we can do better than that. In terms of the audiovisual archives, the DoD archive does have an audiovisual collection. How up to date it is, I cannot tell you. What I do know is that currently you cannot access the finding aid for the visual archive. It's running on a 32-bit system, and they only have 64 bits or something like that. So it's an MS-DOS-based system still, surprise, surprise. But you can't find any photo. I don't know what is happening with the vast amounts of photos being taken currently. I don't think that's being sent necessarily to the archive. Thirdly, to non-statutory forces and the archive, I think if just the events from the past weeks, what happened, for instance, at the University of Fort Hare and with the African National Congress archive that is also located there, I think we've got to think bigger than just the Department of Defense and include, of course, the Department of Defense and military veterans. So maybe the time has come where we need to consolidate all military archives, at least then under one roof. And that would mean, please don't, you can fight with me afterwards, maybe the Maibui archives, the Fort Hare archives, all of these military related archives maybe needs to become under the care of the Department of Defense and military veterans. just an idea. I think that would be good if there was a central repository at least then. But I do think veterans organizations and the many ones that we have here today play a very active role in terms of recording history. So I would actually encourage all veteran organizations here to start your own archives within your organizations. Record the memories, the stories of the people within your organizations. If you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. That's the only way that you can help to build up a collective picture of our heritage, of our military heritage. And if you need help, reach out. There's expertise within the department, within the university and other stakeholders. Just the comments about integrating our military, the resistance leaders into the SANDF and into our own doctrine and our thinking about it. I think we have to move that forward as well. And when we go on staff routes, for instance, with the junior command and staff course or the senior command course or whichever ones, we shouldn't just merely stop at battlefields and say that we were there and just pass through and look at it. But we need to more proactively engage with our military past. So if you're visiting the Battle of Isandlwana, go and look at it from the side, for instance, of the Zulu, or from the British, or from whichever side, but engage more actively with our history. If we do that, we can maybe bridge that gap further into how we as a defence force engage with our history more proactively. And then, I think finally, the point about what happens before the documents get to the archive. And I think that's where the big concern is. It is the fact that, as General Radman also said, we have a lot of information on our cell phones, we have a lot of information on emails, on hard drives, on desktops, and I'm not sure, I stand to be corrected, whether those documents actually end up into the registry and if they will one day actually end up in the archive. And if there's no digital records management, not just a policy, because a policy is just words, but if it's not put into practice, how do you then consolidate all of this information we have nowadays? We are talking about war diaries, correspondence archives, etc. All of that, if that doesn't come back 20, 50 years from now, the students that we are training now to be the next generation of military historians won't be able to write history. And our military heritage will suffer for that in the long run. But you can fight me afterwards, or you can have a drink with me afterwards as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure how many of us have looked at the 4 statues there and wondered, other than just fascination of art. When I got a call from CELOG, I was in fact going to talk about education, military education, and I couldn't get there. But the point I'm making, one wonders whether the story of those, I'm just citing 4, and I'm even leaving out Sandron, is told in Saldanha, in War College, in Stellenbosch. One can name all these centers of education, or those people are simply a footnote in the accumulative heritage of the military. So, the significance of black people in the military doesn't begin with the Anglo War, it precedes it. Just a 2-minute education for those who might not be curious enough. There have been these many wars with colonials. Now, if you study those wars, you will then notice a military acumen that actually, in case you are even a sympathizer for colonials, pushed Sir Harry Smith onto his knees when he fought with Makoma. He was so militarily embarrassed, he had to be sent to New Zealand. Now I can give you further history. But the point I'm making, in terms of military history, is that these warrior kings were beaten by flamboyant technology. Not military prowess. I stand to listen to anybody who will come and tell me otherwise. But the point I'm making is that there's a sense in which we, all of us, are responsible for the creation of the alternative narrative. And that alternative narrative is bringing, foregrounding stories and insights that either were deliberately pushed to underground, or we simply as a nation decided not to take them seriously. And as I said earlier, when we choose to forget, we are betraying ourselves. And whatever else we create on the basis of that erasure is fictitious and it is not real. Part of nation building is for us to confront in a real way some of the uncomfortable truths about our past. And as we do that, we then find ways together not only to rehabilitate, but to redeem that past in a way that it makes sense to all of us. I think I'll leave it at that and wait for the Admiral to invite me again. Section 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Guma. Delegates, we come to the end of session 2. The speakers took us from, informing us on military history, the challenges we are facing in terms of documentations, us not publishing enough, not really presenting our cases to the global world. We also moved to the issues of asset management, where we discussed tangible and intangible assets to make a distinction there. Also going into the history of the museums. What are we doing in the military in the form of really making sure that our museums are talking to us in terms of our history? And I think Mrs. Mkhwanazi elaborated on these issues. Other issues that we believe are pertinent issues, like losing a medal and you don't do anything to look after it or to look for it. It actually talks to how we should be talking or taking ourselves serious when we're talking about the inventory within our space. Professor Slane has spoken about the archiving, what are the challenges we are facing, analog versus digital, and the gaps that we find ourselves as a military to close. And he made few recommendations how we can turn around the situation. Dr. Guma concluded this session where he spoken about religion, passionate about religion, Christianity, theology. But what I take home from me, you decide what you must forget or what you want to forget. If you don't want to forget something, you will not forget. I think that basically summarizes this session. And with that, I want to give our speakers a big round of applause. Chief of Logistics will be coming forward to present token of his appreciation to the 4 speakers. And then after that, we will be introducing the next session, which is session 3. And then I will be obviously ushering the 2 moderators that are going to handle session 3 for us. 4 members, maybe follow the same order of your presentation so that CLOC can acknowledge and appreciate all your hard work. Can we appreciate CLOC for really respecting and providing those presents to the speakers. We're now moving to the 3rd session. I know time is not on our side. I know it's going to be moderated by Captain Navy Plant, who's also a lecturer at the Military Academy, and I think will be supported by Dr. Snyder. Both can come forward, and yeah, we at your mercy to get us to dinner on time.
Good afternoon, Admirals, Generals. I would just like the speakers to come and get a comfy chair, and then once everyone is here, we will continue. Thank you, everybody. Minister. May I continue, sir? Thank you. This session, okay, before I start, I must also say that I would like to rest on all the previous protocols, because I believe there are people that have come in that haven't been invited or haven't been here before and have come in from late meetings. And there are also those who may not have been invited but are still here. Welcome to them as well. As I would say, all protocol observed. I don't particularly like the statement, but we will rest on that. This session is taking a step forward from the previous session. Here we are engaging with the practitioners within the heritage space, whereas the previous session really was looking at policies, looking at those managerial governance environments. Now we have a number of speakers that were former and current serving officers who are intimately involved in the heritage industry, and they are going to now share their particular views and experiences on how they have, from their military careers as well as their post-military careers, engaged in the heritage community and businesses, and how there's a good engagement between military and the heritage community. So I'm going to ask if General Rudman and General Smith would take over from me and start with their presentations. I don't think either man needs an introduction in this environment. They are very well known to everybody.
Just get our slide on, please. Thank you very much. Deputy Minister of Defence, Chief Minister, our host, CNOC, all other protocol observed. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity that we have to present to you today, and we hope that we can contribute towards the conversation that is going on here. We both belong to the Council of Military Veteran Organizations of South Africa, and the level of the representation that you see here indicates how important we deem this aspect in terms of being a military veteran and the contribution that needs to be made. So we take this very seriously, and we've gained some practical experience that we would like to share a few ideas with you today. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, where do we come from? What are we? The Council of Military Veteran Organizations consists out of 34 organizations, among them specially mandated and formed the Tapata Museum to look after the heritage, and then also co-presenting with me here today in terms of specifically policy, Les Rudman from the SA Special Forces Association. If I could just create a little bit of context here, where the CMVO fits in within the military veteran role-play environment. Thank you. Everybody hear me now properly? Thank you. So, we've got the Department of Military Veterans, and then out of the Act 18 of 2011, we've got the statutory body, the South African National Military Veterans Association, that consists of all those non-statutory as well as statutory military veteran associations that you can see indicated there, of which the CMVO SA is one of them. Now the CMVO, what we stand for in our constitution is to provide recognition amongst our members. Secondly, to promote camaraderie. Thirdly, heritage protection. And also looking after our legacy. And then in the last place, nation building. So, since heritage protection is such a large and a huge job actually, they've decided to give the mandate to the Prepatria Museum so that we could establish this museum and work with the CMVO side to side. But seeing that we had to do it with own funds, we had to create a specific non-profit company to do that so that we could raise funds to establish and to continue with the museum. Just a quick look. Currently we are situated at Fort Skanskop. It is part of the Voortrekker Monument precinct, and we are there on very favorable terms, and that's why we can actually afford to continue with the development of the museum. Now, what we are trying to create with the Prepatria Museum is to create a living museum. And when we talk about the living museum, we talk about various interactive events that we are staging, be it commemorative lectures on a monthly basis, and several other events, like for instance the annual military fair concerning certain days, and then also to focus on the youth of the country. We receive schools and school visitors. Specifically at this stage, it seems to me that the schools are bringing their grade 10 and 11 learners to us so that they can go through the museum. When we talk about interactive, you'll see there a few children hanging in paratrooper harnesses. So it is a question of making them feel what it feels like. Sitting with kit and a helmet on his head on a buffalo APC seat. Those are the interactive what we're talking about. You'll also see one of the pictures here depict, for instance, part of the museum and how we are displaying some uniforms, etc., etc. I'm also glad to be able to help the SA Army when they asked, and during our military fair this year, they had a stall within our military fair, and I think they did very well in terms of their recruitment drive during that day. I would like to hand over to Les now.
You have in front of you the scope. Right, our aim today is to make proposals coupled to timelines. Admiral, we might be a bit arrogant by doing that, but we're going to. And we'd like to facilitate and formalize future collaboration between the military veterans organizations and the SANDF as far as heritage matters are concerned. Now, what's the rationale for this proposal? And this is really, it won't be new, the next slide or two to you, because the background we got from the background information provided by C-Log and his staffs prior to this symposium. Now, basically what it's saying here is that militaries worldwide are owners of vast portfolios. It remains a challenging undertaking. We've heard this morning it's finances, resource constraints, and obviously very often lack of professional competence to do the job. An important statement that we get from the 2015 Defence Review says that the Department of Defence committed itself to considering entering into joint ventures with developers and conservation and heritage organizations. So what we are proposing here is not strange, it shouldn't be a strange concept. Now if you look at the broad overview of the current SANDF heritage regulations, and I'm not going to give you the detail, even though I say broad, it's going to be very broad. All I'm going to say is that the purpose of existing heritage regulations are, I'm just going to look at the headings, to safeguard our historical sites, to preserve artifacts and traditions, and to provide a framework for responsible management. And an important section of the Cultural Institutions Act says it does allow for cultural cooperation, but the following two bullet points are very important. It says, this provision does not supersede ceremonial laws that govern military symbols, nor does it extend custodial rights to private entities or veterans organizations. And you need to focus on that. I'll get back to that. Some of the gaps and limitations we experience in general, there are at times ambiguous processes, or people are uncertain of the processes. There's insufficient heritage categorization, and very often inadequate enforcement mechanisms. So what are our proposals for future collaboration? The governing principle, we feel, but the Act actually states it, is that ownership of all military heritage assets resides with the SANDF into perpetuity. That's what the Act says. We can't get past that one. So we need to say, how do we interact and collaborate with the SANDF? So one of the summary of the proposed process requirements, if we look at the second bullet point, we feel that we would like to become involved to take an existing policy or to draft a new policy through a formal working relationship between the military veterans organizations, all of them, and the SANDF, to say how are we going to make this work into future. We've looked at, from our perspective, we haven't looked at the existing policy, but from international approaches to this, they've got certain items that they list. I'm going to just refer to one or two. Under the introduction, if you look at the last bullet point, it says when you do this type of work and you put in a policy, the policy must make provision for cradle-to-grave management of all assets. That's a normal logistics policy, but it also needs to be implemented in the heritage environment. Also looking at what the international world is doing in terms of categorization of assets, and I know Ms. Mkwanazi also, she's looking at that in detail, but one of the proposals we saw is people say you've got to group things together as buildings and structures, as archaeological sites, as cultural landscapes. You'll see this goes a bit wider than what we normally tend to think about things. Historical records and archives. And then the last one, but not least, is the intangible heritage. Oral history, festivals, crafts, traditions, and practices. And maybe let me just digress a little bit. Oral histories. We heard and excited to hear this morning about this project coming up. I think Dr. Kanyile referred to it about the biography project, where they're going to draft a biography. That's important, but that's an academic approach, which is good and it's necessary. But we would like to suggest to you that while the people are still alive, if we're talking about veterans now, get a project in place where you talk to the people, and not just the seniors, all the members who were involved in any particular veterans organization, speak to them, tape it, videograph it, and get the stories. Now that's not authenticated, academically sound research, but at least it's there and you're getting it before the people are not there anymore. So we'd like to just really impress upon everybody the urgency to do that while we still can. If we look at the management and implementation of the policy, I'm going to ask Lawrence just to give you a few proposals about some of the things we feel we could be doing.
Again, I would like to kick off with a proposal, and that proposal is a joint venture operation with the military veteran community. I'm talking there, I cannot talk for these organizations, but I think we can facilitate some contact and put it forward to them within the SAMWA environment, so that we can see how we can take hands and help with all these different aspects. What we would like to offer our help for and our support is the draft and the update of the National SANDF Heritage Asset Register by making use of the military veteran organizations. I think everybody knows about assets of the military that is all over the country, and sometimes I take the time and I go and I see if I can see the barcode that Mr. Kunazi helped us put on everything that's movable and immovable. But every time I see some of these old equipment, disposed equipment standing around, and it's not been marked, so we would like to help with that. Then also to look at updates from national military museums. We've got some good links and liaison with these military museums, and we can ask their assistance with regard to that. And then also where there are formal established loan agreements with some of these museums, to get confirmation from them that is then sent to the SANDF, to the point of contact. And that is one of the things that we need to decide upon during this session as well, in terms of a point of contact within Chief Lock in going further with this project. Then also, we can assist in drafting legally compliant template for a loan use agreement, because, for instance, the Prepatra Museum, we have gone through all the legal costs to get such an agreement in place that is vetted with the legal community, and we can put it at your disposal so that the SANDF legal community can also look at that. Then drafting a legally compliant template for a 99-year cession of property and facilities for military veteran organizations and other heritage structures, stroke museums, to agree with the SANDF when required. So what we're talking about here is maybe a renewal of things that existed in the past, documents that were signed without dates, and maybe in a more informal manner to formalize that with this type of agreement. And then also the protection measures are strengthened to ensure better safeguarding of heritage sites managed by both the SANDF and the military veteran organizations. I can tell you from experience that many of the artifacts that we have are very popular, some of it expensive, and most of it is tradable, and it's tradable for sums of money that will amaze you if you look at it. Then in terms of capacity building, we would like to make the following proposal through the Prepatra Museum. What we can offer is to provide practical on-the-job training to South African National Service Institute candidates, as well as Reserve Force candidates selected to assist the broader spectrum of military veteran associations in establishing military museums or to assist the SANDF in working within their own museums. Now, the type of training that we can offer in terms of internships will be exhibition managers, inventory managers, then also the maintenance of artifacts. And the only thing that we cannot really assist you with, but we can help with some practical exposure, is to be the curator of such a museum. Because for that job you need to have a tertiary education, but there may be some suitable candidates within the reserves that can be called up, and we just need to be to get a little bit of exposure to be pushed into such a responsibility again. And we've got a formally trained curator that's at our disposal. At our disposal, we don't dispose of her. And if such a person reports for some interaction, we will be able to facilitate it and to contribute towards practical exposure in this regard. The example that I would like to talk to you, and I don't want to talk on Daniel Sotsanga's hand here, but for instance, after the basic training that is envisaged for a SANDF candidate and his theoretical training that he has received in a specific vocational direction, if he chose this direction as something that he would like to do, we would be able then to assist in exposing and do on-the-job in-service training with such candidates. So that is something that we would like to get involved in. And in the same vein, we would also like to extend this offer to our fellow military veteran organizations so that if they need somebody to be exposed and to get a little bit of in-service training, we will be very lucky and pleased to help out in this regard. The main thing here, I think, is corroboration, so that we can assist each other and also make sure that we maintain the execution of the rules and regulations that pertain to many of the artifacts that we would like to obtain, and some of which we already have. Thank you, and then yes, you can continue.
Admiral Mkonto, we said we're going to be a bit forward and we're making certain proposals, but I think if you see it in the light that we are available. We are available. I don't want to talk like we hear the word immediately being used on TV, but we are available immediately to start interacting and collaborating with your staffs. If we could, by the end of this conference tomorrow, if you could just say to us, who is your person in the C-Log environment that we can start phoning and harassing so that we can say, how can we assist, what can we do? I'd like to say to you that at the back, if I could just ask Jaco to stand up, the CMDO representative who will be working through with your staff, is Jaco van As at the back there. And we are proposing that we start working and that by the end of November, we give you a progress report. We think it is possible if we take an existing policy, heritage policy, within your department, and we will never have the ultimate policy in place. If we can take an existing one, update it as far as we can, get you to accept that, and also the amended implementation instructions within your environment, because it lies in your environment, by the middle of December, that we say we can take this proposed, not 100%, not 90% even, but a proposal to get us going from the 1st of January next year, that we can start working, everybody interacting with one another, and start rolling these things out. I'd like to just summarize with this slide. It says, what will this give us? It says it will strengthen heritage protection. These proposals will enhance measures to safeguard military heritage effectively and responsibly. As far as improved clarity and compliance is concerned, we say the regulations provide clearer guidelines for adherence to heritage protection policies and standards. If we take community involvement, it encourages active participation from communities to support the heritage preservation efforts. And I think we often tend to forget about the community involvement. It's not just always us. There's a community around us that are part of this. And that preservation for future generations ensures military heritage remains protected and accessible for educational and cultural purposes. So, just a reminder, when we started off, we said our aim was to make proposals coupled to timelines, to facilitate and formalize the future collaboration between not just the CMDO, all of us as military veteran organizations and the SANDF, as far as heritage matters are concerned. That is just from one of our former commanders-in-chief. So thank you very much. We feel privileged to have been here today to participate in this symposium. We'd like to thank you for this initiative. And we know we're not going to discuss now, but I think that that quotation says it all. We don't know them all, but we owe them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Generals, for a very comprehensive presentation. I'm not going to delve into a summary of the presentation now because we are pushed for time, but I think it's important to note that a dream with a timeline is a plan. And the Generals have been very forward, very gracious and very generous to offer us a template to move forward. And I think we should call on everyone here who is interested in heritage to approach the Generals afterwards and see how you can synchronize and learn from them, which from what we've seen in terms of their museum as well as the presentation, that they have tremendous amounts of institutional knowledge and experience to be able to help us go forward with heritage. Our next speaker is not from the Defence Force, he's actually from a sister university of ours, and he's going to be talking about military heritage tourism, and I think he's from Northwest. Sorry? Vaal University, sorry. Wrong university, please forgive me. Beautiful, Professor.
Thank you very much, session moderator. If I have 2 minutes left, just cough twice, please. Oh, okay. All right. Attendees, all protocol observed. The following is a sum of my research over the past 8 years into military heritage tourism. We have now all heard about the production or the supply side of military heritage tourism, and my focus has been on what do the consumers experience from the offerings that are available. And a large part of my professorship or associate professorship has been based on this research. So I'm in it for the long run. So we're looking at military heritage tourism as a niche insights from South Africa. And the journey started regarding the importance of military heritage tourism in South Africa. It holds a significant value in South Africa, serving as a means to explore the complex narratives of the country's past through various sites and experiences, It fosters a deeper sense of nostalgia and identify why, while also enhancing the quality of life for individuals and communities by promoting education and emotional engagement. A chronological exploration of military heritage tourism in South Africa produced key findings and developments over 8 years of research. And this is my journey. 2017, I started with an inaugural study identifying several components of military heritage, demonstrating its interconnected nature and establishing it as a distinct niche within South African tourism. 2018, focus shifted to visitor motivation, revealing that education and nostalgia significantly enhance the quality of life for museum visitors, cementing the museum's dual role as both information and emotionally engaging experiences. 2019 saw the investigation and research on military festivals, highlighted their role in enhancing social engagement and quality of life through a blend of commemoration and entertainment, attracting a diverse audience. 2020, my focus shifted to the role of memorials and monuments, which were examined, which emphasized their emotional significance and identity-focused benefits, contributing to visitors' quality of life through reflection and remembrance. 2021, a qualitative interview with veterans revealed that battlefield tourism serves as a means of emotional healing, reconciliation, and identity affirmation, highlighting the need for sensitive management of such experiences. 2022, the study identified integrational transfer or intergenerational transfer and identity affirmation as new motivations for visiting military expos, emphasizing the need for inclusive programming that engages diverse audiences. 2024, I was looking at military reenactors, showcasing their role in heritage transmission, emphasizing the blend of education and performance and suggesting partnership for enriched interpretation. But this required terrain mapping and appreciation. I've been around the military for a while now, so it's rubbing off. The inaugural study of 2017 laid the foundation for understanding military heritage tourism by mapping and appreciating its key components. These included battlefields, museums, memorials, monuments, festivals and events, reenactments, and private collectors. The ecosystem of interrelated elements reinforced each other and appeals to a broad audience beyond just enthusiasts. The study concluded that military heritage tourism is a viable and distinct niche within South Africa's broader heritage tourism landscape. It highlighted the emotional and social relevance of military heritage tourism, which warrants its unique treatment in the tourism discussion. Recommendations that came out of the study was that it required a strengthening of the impact of military heritage tourism. The study recommended its formal recognition within national tourism and heritage policies. This recognition would create a framework for better collaboration among institutions and role players, ensuring more coordinated management and interpretation of military heritage tourism sites. And this symposium is a reflection of that vision. Key findings: 7-component framework was established, interconnected niche ecosystem demonstrated, research gaps identified, and policy recognition called for. Moving to the actual research, military museums. I specifically looked at the SA Armour Museum. Visitors to military museums are motivated by a range of factors, which include the desire to learn about history, events, connect with personal or cultural heritage, seek an escape from daily life, and engage in social interactions with fellow visitors or family. These motivations are critical in understanding how military heritage contributes to individual and collective well-being. Military museums play a vital role in both educating the public about historical events and evoking emotional connections to those events. This dual function enhances the visitor experience by providing not only knowledge, but also fostering reflection and emotional engagement with the past. To maximize visitor satisfaction and enhance quality of life, military museums should strive to achieve a balance between factual educational content and opportunities for reflective engagement, incorporating personal stories, veterans' testimonies, and interactive exhibits which can deepen emotional connection and enrich the visitor experience. Key findings: core motives were identified, which include education. Nostalgia played a significant role. Escape from daily life through visits. Social interaction enhanced the experience. Museum visits improved well-being, and interpretation balanced facts. My screen just died. There we go. With emotion. Then I moved to military festivals, which identified as hybrid engagement experiences. Military festivals enhance visitor engagement by creating a dynamic space for leisure activities, community bonding, and educational experiences. The study showed that participants are drawn to the celebration of military history while also seeking social connection and enjoyment experiences. The dual focus allowed festivals to attract a broader audience, enriching the community's understanding of its military heritage. Quality of life improvements reported by visitors highlighted the importance of social interaction and recreational enjoyment. Many attendees expressed a sense of belonging and community, indicating that military festivals foster social cohesion and collective well-being, illustrating how these events serve as vital community hubs. By integrating educational components with festival activities, attendees gain insight into military history and the significance of remembrance. This approach encourages deeper engagement with the past, allowing individuals to reflect on the importance of military heritage while enjoying the celebratory atmosphere. Next, I looked at memorials and monuments. And interestingly enough, the word memorial stems from the Latin memorialis, which means to remember, which is quite apt. Visitors to memorials and monuments are primarily motivated by a desire for remembrance, a sense of duty and affirmation of national and familial identity. These motivations foster deep emotional connections and promote reflective experiences that resonate personally with visitors. Memorials and monuments serve as crucial spaces for preserving complex emotions relating to grief, pride, and personal history. They facilitate not only individual reflections, but also foster a collective sense of identity, community among visitors who share similar experiences or backgrounds. The management of memorials should prioritize preserving their contemplative nature. These include creating environments that invite reflection and incorporating interpretive strategies that acknowledge diverse narratives and histories, ensuring inclusivity for all visitors. Next, I looked at battlefield tourism, specifically at veterans' experiences. Revisiting battlefields often elicit a complex array of emotional responses in veterans, including the feelings of pain, nostalgia, and catharsis. These experiences can contribute to their psychological healing and reconciliation as they confront past traumas and support in a supportive environment. Battlefield tourism has been shown to foster reconciliation and meaning among veterans as they share their experience and connect with others who have undergone similar experiences. This creates a sense of community and support that aids in their healing process. To ensure that battlefield tourism is beneficial, it's essential to implement tours designed with psychological support and ethical safeguards in mind. This includes pre-departure briefings, guided reflection, and collaboration with veterans organizations to enhance the overall experiences. Strengthening of partnerships required effective collaboration with veterans organizations, which is essential for fostering an environment of respect and understanding. These partnerships can enhance educational outcomes while providing veterans with a platform for sharing their stories, thus promoting healing and reconciliation within communities. Then I looked at military expos, specifically the African Aerospace and Defense. The research on military expos revealed that visitors are motivated by a combination of factors which include, again, education and nostalgia, identity affirmation, and intergenerational transfer. These motives influence the overall quality of life of visitors through satisfaction across various life domains such as social, emotional, and recreational life. The study highlighted that motivations in military heritage are not linear but rather layered and mediated, meaning that visitors may experience multiple motivators at once, contributing to more profound engagement and benefit. To maximize visitor engagement, satisfaction programming at military expos should be designed to encourage intergenerational participation, foster transfer of knowledge and appreciation for military heritage across different age groups. Lastly, I looked at military reenactors, the custodians of living history. Reenactors play a vital role in preserving and communicating military heritage, viewing themselves as custodians of living history. Their performances not only bring history and events to life, but also provide educational opportunities for audiences. By embodying historical figures, they create immersive experiences that enhance public understanding of military events and their significance. The presence of reenactors at heritage sites foster community engagement and participation. They create opportunities for dialogue around difficult historical narratives, bridges the gaps between past and present. This not only promotes social cohesion, but also encourages critical reflection and national identity and collaboration. Reenactors can enhance visitor experiences by providing context and emotional depth to historical events. They allow audiences to experience history in a tangible way, fostering empathy and deeper understanding of implications of past conflicts. This experiential learning approach can significantly enrich the educational value of military heritage tourism. The key themes in military heritage tourism that we found reveals a recurring theme of military heritage tourism, which emphasizes its multidimensional impact. Not only does military heritage tourism enhance cognitive engagement through educational experience, it also fosters emotional connection and strengthens community ties, contributing to an enriching understanding of different cultural narratives. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Venter. Very enlightening. I think the takeaway here is when we're engaging with military heritage, it is not a simple task, it's not a simple event. It is very emotive, it can be for entertainment, it can be for intergenerational connection, it can be for reconciliation. So when we're looking at our heritage estate and the management thereof, we must realize that it is a building block to building national cohesion and national identity and should not be taken lightly. Our next speaker actually comes from Armour and worked for a while at the Armour Museum, which Professor Venter visited numerous times, and he's now going to touch on heritage within military operations, specifically Operation Mistral. I'll hand to Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Jean-Pierre Sherman.
Admiral, General, Deputy Minister, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to speak to you this afternoon. Like the Captain said, I'm Jean-Pierre Sherman, and I currently teach military history at the Academy in Saldanha. And this year I have been teaching second years. And in the second year curriculum, the curriculum deals with from prehistory up until 1994. And while preparing for this conference, or the symposium rather, my students came to me and said that, Doctor, we don't ever hear our own stories. We don't hear about anything that the SANDF is doing. Why does our curriculum stop in 1994 at integration? Why don't we have our own stories that we can relate to? And I personally can relate to that as well, to those questions, because I'm a 1993 National Serviceman. So I served literally 1 year in the old SADF and 32 years in the SANDF. So I understand their frustrations, their desire to see their own stories being displayed in our classroom, spoken about, debated about. And this is my story, but this is also your story, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone sitting in this room, I'm certain, has served in the SANDF. And where are our stories being told? Where are our stories being discussed and debated in our military schools? And with this idea in mind, I started thinking, okay, what about the SANDF's military heritage? I understand as an historian about what happened 10, 20, 100 years ago, but what happened about 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago? And that is my departure point today. And while I was thinking about this, I thought, let me go and look and see what happened in the DRC. It has been in the news of late. We all know what happened in January. And I thought, let me just go and, as an historian, scratch around and look and see what can I find. Sorry. And this is my scope for the next 15 minutes. I'm quickly looking at the military heritage within the SANDF particularly, and I'm using Operation Mistral, particularly under Monarch. Those first 8 years that we go to the DRC, as the lens through which I quickly wanted to look and see what was our military heritage. And I'll discuss quickly the sources that I utilized, how difficult it was for me to build an historical timeline. Then a quick overview of the combat forces into the DRC, the casualties that we suffered in the DRC, and then some reflection on researching contemporary military history, because this is what we're talking about, the history of the last 10 years, the last 20 years, and then quickly some suggestions and conclusions. Currently, the SANDF, as we all know, and South Africa, only celebrates the achievements of South Africans who served, strangely enough, during the First World War. We all know that we celebrate Delville Wood, we celebrate the sinking of the SAS Mendi, we celebrate the Battle of Square Hill, and we celebrate on the 11th of November at 11 o'clock the normal Armistice Day Parade. All these commemorations come from the First World War, 120 years ago. No celebrations currently that I know of on a national level take place of any other conflicts that Africans have been involved in. And we have spoken today that we are, as a country, blessed with having an extensive military history background that stretches far into antiquity. And we currently are celebrating none of these achievements, and more specifically for my purposes today, we do not celebrate any SANDF achievements, and there are many to be celebrated, which you are well aware of. As my case study, I sat down and I decided I want to look at Operation Mistral, the SANDF's deployment to the DRC, in order to highlight this gap that we currently have within SANDF military heritage. And Mistral, from my perspective, was incredibly historically important. For those of you who do not realize it, Mistral now constitutes the longest continuous running military mission ever performed by South African Armed Forces. It is now longer than, in year span, than the South African Border War, the South African War of Liberation, that starts officially in 1966 and ends with Namibia's independence in 1990. Mistral now, we have been sending South African soldiers to the DRC, as of today, for 8,971 days, which constitutes almost 24 years, 6 months, and 22 days. That alone, from my perspective, makes Mistral, the DRC, a vitally important mission to be studied at our military university and at our military education in general. What sources did I utilize? We have spoken throughout the entire day about the limitations that the military archives currently has. So currently I cannot, as an historian, go to the military archives and go and draw whatever files, photographs, notes, documents there are about any of the SANDF's operations, training, anything about it. So what I did use was the United Nations has an online database, the Parliamentary Monitoring Group that periodically releases on their internet their findings. The South African DoD annual report is available. There are limited academic journals written about the SANDF, but limited being an operative word in that sentence. Obviously, without having access to sources, writing an academic journal becomes quite a tough task. News articles, News 24, Defence Web that's in the house, all these type of organizations, the normal journalists are easily one of our best sources of information at the moment about what's currently happening in the SANDF. Now we all know that, from my personal perspective, they only look at what we're doing bad. They never look at what we're doing good. They only report about whenever we're being naughty, whenever we've had a mistake. They never say, well done, good job, look what you guys have done. So using news has been a bit of a challenge. And lastly, social media. Social media today, everybody's got his own cell phone, everybody's got his own little Facebook account. So I went and I tried to use social media to see, could I actually build the story out. The last thing that I used was a little book published by a Joint Operations Division on their history, which formed the basis of my research. So there is one publication, literally one, that covers our DRC missions. There are a couple of news articles, and then there's social media. And that already should worry you as members of the SANDF. If this is our total collective knowledge that is available at the moment for 30 years of military service, that is available for the general public. For a youngster now in high school who's considering a career in the military, how does that person go and find a little bit more about what we do as an organization? If he doesn't have or she have direct family member that's serving in the uniform at the moment, how does general person on the street, the taxpayer that pay my salary and your salary, how do they go and find out what do we do? And I find that quite disturbing. Building a historical timeline, for those of you who might have forgotten or were physically there, in October 1999, the United Nations organization establishes the military mission to the DRC. And it's under its French abbreviation, MONUC. It's officially established through a United Nations resolution. If you can remember, the Second Congo War has been raging, and the Second Congo War triggers the United Nations intervention. And the United Nations comes to South Africa. We do not have a real history of peacekeeping per se. We are not planning on actually doing peacekeeping at that stage, but we have really cut our teeth in Burundi. And from the good work that has been done in Burundi, the United Nations presses on the SANDF button and says, please, we need your assistance. And initially, that assistance is of a very specialized nature. On the 5th of April in 2001, the first elements of the South African Specialist Contingent will leave our shores and head for the DRC, landing in Kinshasa. It consists out of a headquarters grouping, 6 cargo handling teams, mostly from 101 Air Supply there in Pretoria, 2 airfield crash rescue and firefighting teams from the Air Force, and the aeromedical evacuation team from the SANDF. And this is a very small, it is less than 100 people strong, but these pioneers will, like I already said, be the front runners of a mission that is now in its almost 25th year of continuous military operating. There you can see photographs, in case you're wondering where I got these photographs from. These photographs come from news reports and from people's Facebook accounts and their Twitter accounts and those type of resources. This is just of Kinshasa and the initial South African members deploying to Kinshasa as the air cargo handling team. There you can see the Congo River comes down in flood, and our air and our cargo handlers have to deal with a river that is in flood and moving vehicles on and off pontoons and ferries. Not something that we as Africans really deal with on a day-to-day basis, having a major river system, one of the largest in the world, the second largest in Africa, coming down in flood, and now we have to try and move military equipment across it. This comes from the parliamentary group. You can see initially where these African special contingents deployed, mostly in Kinshasa, and then split up into the air cargo handling teams at the major airports. And when the military police joined, 49 members of the military police agency will join the mission very soon after the first rotation, and these policemen will start deploying across the DRC. In March 2003, the advanced team of South Africa's first combat forces will arrive in the DRC, and we're very blessed to have General Lawrence Smith, who is the OC of that first platoon, seated directly behind me. And General Smith, as the OC of 4th Brigade, leads the first combat forces into the DRC. They will consist of a motorized infantry battalion group from 2 science Zeerust, an engineer squadron, a ferry river crossing unit, a well drilling unit, and a military police section. And General Smith will be appointed as the OC of Sector 5. He will be the first African on a United Nations mission to be given command of United Nations forces. And he'll have 37 different nationalities operating under his command and control. Now, not everybody is speaking English. You're more than welcome to speak to the General afterwards to hear his personal stories. But these are the things that we should be talking and teaching our students in the military academy and in our schools. There you can see again photographs. This is from a later deployment in 2007. I got this from a blog. This person who posted these pictures was a member of the SNDF, has consequently resigned and is now working on Civilian Street. But he had a blog. He kept these photographs while deployed in Lubero, which is the north of Goma, opposite virtually Uganda, that part of the world. And these are the photographs of his deployment, his 6 months in the DRC. There you can see the equator. Now, I've been very fortunate to deploy into this part of the world. And unlike a lot of my colleagues that work at the military academy, I am not an academy graduate. I came and spent a lot of my military career outside academia. I spent 25 years working in the larger army. I've been fortunate enough to deploy both in Southern Africa and in Central Africa. I worked and studied after hours. I'm a UNISA graduate. I did well, went to work the whole day, and in the evenings when everybody else was out partying, I was sitting and studying on my own. And only when I got to my doctorate did I actually attend the military academy. So I spent 25 years undercover as an academic before actually becoming one in reality. Here you can see again from the parliamentary group the deployment of our combat forces into the DRC. And those of you who have read anything and seen anything in the news will know that most of the United Nations effort is there along that eastern border of the DRC, between the DRC and Rwanda and Burundi and Uganda. And that is as true as what it was in 2004. Now, 2025, and exactly the same scenario is still being played out. While going through all these different accounts, one thing that you do find is our casualties. And you can see there in July of 2003, Corporal Mashawa of Tusai is killed in Kindu when a Samuel heavy vehicle truck accidentally drives over him while he's on the parade ground. He's the first loss of life. And I'm sorry to say he's not the first and the only one. We will have numerous casualties, not only in the DRC, but throughout our deployments. Currently, for those of you who have not realized it, more than 100 members of the South African National Defence Force have perished on United Nations missions. Now, I was just looking, like I told you, at 8 years. But in this group, you can see that, like in 2004, 6 members of Seven Side, and I'm certain you guys, when I mention it, you will remember some of these stories. They drowned when their Casper is overtaking a truck on a very steep uphill, and the road collapses because of the weight of that vehicle. And it rolls down the embankment and lands in Lake Kivu. And where it lands, it is more than 40 meters deep to the bottom of that lake. And the Casper goes straight down like a rock. And 6 members of 7 SAR rather, drown. They cannot get out of that vehicle in time before it goes to the bottom. Not long thereafter, on the same, from 2 SAR rather, 2 SAR you'll see rotates quite regularly, 2 SAR and 7 SAR for the first 2 or 3 years rotate regularly into the DRC. So you can imagine the strain that it takes on family and friends regularly deploying in and out thousands of miles away from home. Rifleman Martin Mokhatutau is shot and killed while defending a convoy that comes under fire in an ambush. He is the second South African to be killed in combat. During that same contact, a little bit later on that day, while transporting members that had been wounded earlier during the previous contact, one of the vehicles unfortunately is involved in an accident, and another soldier is killed. Lastly, just for my time zone, there you can see in July 2006, a Captain Geddy of 14 SAI, he's the first officer to be killed in the DRC. And by the end of Monarch, those 7 years, we have 17 members of the South African National Defence Force who have been killed. 2 in action and 15 due to other causes. And in 2010, Monarch will cease to exist, and a more robust mission MONUSCO, which is currently run today, still, and we still have SANDF members deployed today. As we speak, there are more than 1,000 members of the South African National Defence Force deployed under MONUSCO currently in the DRC. There you can see that the bridges of the DRC are not exactly user-friendly for South African military vehicles, and that is typically what happens when you're deploying that part of the world. This is just the Maningi base. This base was designed and constructed by South African military engineers. It is currently used by many different forces, but this base, as you see it, is built by the South Africans. This is typically the view that you would have as South African if you wake up in that base. That is Africa's most active volcano. It is only 11 kilometers away from your camp. When you wake up in the morning, you constantly see that smoke coming out of the top of that mountain, and you're waiting for the day for that volcano to erupt. The last time it erupted, that lava flow went through Goma, over the international airport, and into the sea. So you are constantly living with this idea behind you. Researching contemporary military history and trying to sort out the SANDF military heritage, we have spoken a lot today about the difficulties that are encountered by military historians and researchers in general. We're talking about the virtual inaccessibility of military historians to the archives. Modern SANDF records, the war diaries that we've already spoken about, some of them are poorly written and they are incomplete, those that I've seen. Electronic sources, we've spoken about having a memory stick with all your information, but when you retire, when you resign, when you leave, that memory stick stays in your pocket and doesn't go to the archives. If you're dealing with modern contemporary history, you need ethical clearance from the university. It is an extra and it's quite a lengthy process. You need defense diligence clearance to be able to do that. That's why for this study, I used only open source information. I did not have DI clearance. I did not have ethical clearance, so I could not speak to anybody, I could not use any of the official DoD documents, I could only use which was already available. So these factors discourage historians from even contemplating researching the SANDF's military heritage at the moment. Lastly, to conclude, my suggestions of conclusion, without needed intervention, the South African National Defence Force's military heritage is going to be lost forever. As the only uniform military historian currently that I know of, serving within the SANDF, who has a doctorate in military history, I wish to make the following suggestions. Firstly, that I be granted permission to brief contingents prior, during, and post-deployments in the art of historical record keeping. That I can start encouraging and helping the members before they deploy and when they come back with their record keeping, that we can try and sort out the SANDF's military heritage. Be allowed to interview participants to preserve their historical information, and be allowed to visit the contingents to be able to accurately record how their situation looks up on the ground. I have been fortunate to deploy to that area, but it was a couple of years ago. The situation on the ground changes, and you would normally have military historians as part and parcel of your contingents deploying to be able to assist the commanders in keeping the military heritage alive and accurately. So we need to be able to act more and could be able to say what collective history has been lost. Thank you. It was a mouthful, but I appreciate your time and I wish you a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your input, sir. I think it's important to take note, and I think the takeaway here is that we've been seeing our military heritage as what has happened before, what has been left for us. Where we should maybe also focus on our military heritage and what are we going to leave for those that follow us. And we are seeing currently the challenge that we might be the most recorded generation in history, but we're the least documented generation in history. And when it comes to then building the narratives, building the monuments, building the memorials, we've left very few documents behind from which we can then build this history. But I would like to just move away from the land and away from our home in the DRC and cast our eyes to the sea and to a very important monument or museum of a very important ship or boat that of the SA Navy, and I'd ask Admiral Suderland to share his experiences in setting up the SAS Assegai Museum. Admiral?
Good afternoon, gentlemen and ladies. With the pending acquisition of 3 modern German submarines under the somewhat malaligned defence arms deal signed in December 1999, the Navy needed to plan the demise and disposal of our first submarines, the 3 French-built Daphne-class submarines, which had arrived here in 1971-72. Whilst they had been upgraded and the last 2 of them still had 3rd generation combat suites, they were now approaching 30 years and we needed to release our submarine crews to go across to Germany for the new boats. Thus the first of our submarines, the SAS Speer, earlier Berea van Riebeck, was placed on disposal list, and Umkhonto, ex-Emily Hobhouse, the second one, to follow. In June 2003, the cutting up of the Speer commenced in the dry dock in Simonstown. Witnessed by many of the Navy who now realized her significance to our naval heritage. It seemed like an ignominious end to a proud trailblazing vessel that had served us so well. It was too late to save her, but a group of like-minded members, including Vice Admiral Woodburn, an ex-chief of the Navy and also the first OC of Umkhonto, met to form a project team. As a result, it was decided that Assegai, the ex-Johanna van der Merwe, which only paid off in 2003, November 2003, would be the boat to save. Sorry, it's she'd be the first boat to save. She had been in commission. This is going the wrong way. They've become a little bit mixed up. But Assegai decommissioned and we decided to keep her. Assegai was then held back from the disposal and an informal Assegai steering committee drew up a plan to move her to the Naval Museum in the West Yard in Simonstown, which you see in front of you here. At that stage, the only preserved warships in South Africa were the World War II boom defence vessel SAS Somerset in the V&A waterfront and the minesweeper SAS Durban in the Maritime Museum in Durban. In 2005, the Navy Board, later called the Navy Command Council, approved their preservation at the Naval Museum as planned under the auspices of the Naval Heritage Trust, on condition that she was ashore, and secondly, at no cost to the Navy or to the state. The committee started raising funds to finance the necessary environmental and engineering inspections and plan the necessary authorities. A slow and tedious process, also difficult as we had nothing to show for what we were doing, other than it being a dream. As we already held the keys to the boat, during the Navy Festival in 2008, again in 2009, we opened Assegai to the visitors at the Navy Festival for a donation. This proved a great attraction, and we approached the Naval Board for permission to open it as a floating museum for a set period to raise the funds and motivate larger donors. This was approved, and in 2010, with much help from the dockyard in Simonstown, we prepared her for mooring on the outer wall of the dockyard. This is so we could receive visitors by boat outside the security area of the Navy. Okay, we're going to work on again. On the 1st of September, she arrived at her new berth, and as I said there, nobody said there wouldn't be teething problems. It took a bit of time before we could get her right. And on the 23rd of December 2010, we opened for our first visitors. It soon became apparent that the boat ferry was too weather dependent, and a road ferry system was introduced, albeit with delays due to security issues. We could now motivate donations, such as that rather large check. It wasn't for that much, but it was a big check. And we started getting in funds. Open 7 days a week and run entirely by volunteers, the new submarine museum, which was placed in a very picturesque area of the dockyard, attracted many, many visitors and became quite an advertisement for the Navy, as few people realize that the only contact tourists and visitors have with the Navy is at the two museums, the Naval Museum and the Submarine Museum. By August 2015, with 56,000 visitors from 109 countries or dependencies having passed through there, we needed to lift her out of the water for some routine maintenance, a 3-month maintenance period. These visitor numbers and their comments, 15,000 of them, clearly indicated the future viability of the museum and its potential. Once placed ashore, however, the Navy had insufficient funds for the maintenance and decided to take back responsibility for the preservation. It had become apparent that the cost of moving her to the Naval Museum, that site would be too prohibitive. At this stage, we had raised about 800,000 rand towards the preservation, which the Naval Heritage Trust was holding in trust. The Assegai Steering Committee then went into abeyance, but kept a watching brief as it became increasingly obvious that the Navy was not going to be able to do it either at the cost. In 2020, a senior source in the Naval Dockyard advised me that Assegai was occupying valuable working space near the sinker lift and that they had asked the Navy to remove her. This was the break we needed, and a formal brief motivating the restoration of Assegai as a museum by the Naval Heritage Trust was submitted to Sea Navy on the 27th of September 2020. The response was surprisingly quick, and on the 23rd of October, then Chief Director Maritime Strategy, then Rear Admiral Umkhonto, arrived to the Cape for a briefing on how we meant to do it. We showed him a presentation. It was an interesting concept because we had very little docking space in the area. The concept was to place her on the town jetty, next to the town jetty in Simonstown, the only public berthing spot available. The presentation was very positively received, and subsequently Sea Navy gave approval in principle and with a number of minor requirements, including the advice of legal counsel to ensure compliance with all state legislation and controls. At this stage, there were only 3 members of the steering committee left, and one of whom, the chairman, was living in Paarl and not readily available. The remaining 2 were Captain John Lamont and myself. We thus identified 2 recently retired submariners, Rear Admiral Hanno Pöterberg and Rear Admiral Digby Thompson, both ex-officers commanding of the submarine, as the new chairman and vice chairman, and the naval architect and ex-head of the Navy's Design Bureau, Rear Admiral Kevin Watson, as project manager. On the 19th of November 2020, all were appointed by to the steering committee by the NHD, along with the OIC of our museum and Warrant Officer David Harrison, a serving submariner with tremendous knowledge of these submarines. Under dynamic new leadership, it was soon established that the cost of berthing her on the town jetty was also beyond our reach. The Navy tentatively agreed to us placing her on a submarine at a previously identified site at Coal Point, with accessible to the public. This gives you an idea where we were looking. Not only did this site have 2 buildings, ideal for offices and display gallery, but the basic toilets and a number of storage garages. It also had access to the sea behind us, in the harbour, and space for additional, and this is important, additional ship or boat exhibits in the future. The perfect location for the museum. The committee now decided to concentrate our efforts on moving this boat to the site, as our priority with restoration of the hull postponed until we were out in the open and making an income. The project engineer now churned out a myriad of design and engineering drawings for the move and placement of the boat, enabling costing and budgeting and proper planning for the move. The 700-ton move would require the contracting of a heavy lift company and the fitting of lifting frames to the hull, all at an estimated cost of 3 million rand. A proposed memorandum of agreement between the South African Navy and the Naval Heritage Trust for the Submarine Museum SAS Assegai was drawn up by the committee and submitted for approval. After a number of iterations, and that's various versions, it was, and close scrutiny by the Navy's legal team, it was signed by the Chief of the Navy on the 28th of April and by the Chairman of the Naval Heritage Trust on the 16th of May. This was the final formality, and now the steering committee could seriously start raising funds, as well as start making visible progress with the commencement of the next phase, preparing the boat and site for the physical move. Whilst we had been trying to source a major sponsor for the entire project, the pressure was now on to raise funding from any sources or sponsorship in kind. A prospectus to promote the project was drawn up with bunk ownership as an incentive for individual donors of 10 to 50,000 rand. You get a name plaque on that bunk as yours. And a crowdfunding, a 2-month crowdfunding campaign initiated in October 2022. This brought in some 200,000, but it was also the kickstart we needed, and donations kept rolling in. Using our original funds, the foundations and base for the boat were started in November. And there you can see where we started to build it. And Diamond Shipyard agreed to the manufacture and fitting of the 4 lifting frames, a saving of 1.5 million rand. These frames were fitted to the boat and formally handed over to the project in the presence of Sea Navy in August 2023. On this occasion, Chief of the Navy confirmed his support by becoming a bunk owner, which was rather important. Further donations in kind came in, as did the cash donations, and by May 2024, we cracked 1.2 million rand, the target amount to start negotiating with the Vanguard, the selected heavy mover company. This amount came from some 150 donors, both companies and individuals. That same month, we were advised by the Mayor of Cape Town that he had granted a 750,000 rand towards the project, and we were there at last. As Vanguard's quote for the move was 2 years old, we asked them for a new quote and whether they'd be available soon. To our surprise, they quoted 500,000 rand less than the original one, another donation in kind, and would be available to move us as soon as June. The dockyard were in the final stages of preparing the submarine. The foundations were already, and once we cleared the route to the Navy scrapyard, all systems were go. Vanguard's equipment started arriving in early July. There we go. And as you can see, it was heavy lift. They brought with them 4 sets of hydraulic self-propelled platforms with a total of 272 wheels. We had them under, as you can see, in place and ready to roll. But shortly after starting, we had a bend in the frame. It appeared that there was a weakness there. The dockyard sprang into action, but by the 19th of July we were moving again. This is just to indicate how far we had to go from the synchro lift to her position. It was just over 300 meters to the site, but it was in pouring rain. And the 3-point turn that you can see in the corner at the bottom right became a 38-pointer. Then, dogged by pouring rain, we were finally there. Assegai was safe at last, 21 years after she paid off when we started this project. Now came the hard work to prepare the rather unsightly hulk. You can see what she looked like, into an attractive and proud exhibit with the aim of soft opening in December of that year. This included repurposing and repairing the rather rundown shore facilities, which you can see here, and making them wheelchair friendly. We had to destroy the toilets, they were completely unsuitable, and the exhibition space as well. But with some 24 volunteers, that's all we had. From the committee and other supporters, as well as sponsorship in kind, and some friendly contractors. Our Cinderella submarine and her coach were soon ready for the ball by early December. As the NHT is a volunteer trust and is a not-for-profit company, Assegai Management NPC was registered to run the museum on a daily basis. This was held in to be responsible for the raising of funds, with all excess funds raised paid into the Assegai Restoration account held by the Naval Heritage Trust. And I'm pleased to say the Navy has representatives on each of these organizations. On the 13th of December, the steering committee handed over the new museum to the Assegai Management Company. And on the 16th of December, we opened to the public for the first time as an independent annex to the Naval Museum. On the 30th of April that year, the Submarine Museum was formally opened by the Chief of the Navy, accompanied by the Mayor of Cape Town. And at the ceremony, the Mayor unveiled our donor wall, which lists all our major donors. In September, Chief of the Navy inaugurated our Submarine Memorial Wall, which you can see now on the right. And this is in memory of all submariners who died, and in particular 3 who died tragically 2 years ago. To date, the museum has had over 22,500 visitors from 97 countries or dependencies, and has a rating of 4.9 out of 5 on the Google scale. It is now the second biggest tourist attraction in Simonstown after the penguins, and the only preserved warship in South Africa, as SAS Somerset is now being cut up for razor blades and scrap. SAS Durban is lying on the harbour bottom. What is more, she is the only submarine museum in Africa and one of only 6 in the Southern Hemisphere. Her future is now secure, and we estimate that the Restoration Fund will reach over 1 million rand in the early new year, beginning of the new year. This has been achieved through the extensive use of volunteer guides and maintainers, whose sole reward is the pleasure and positive feedback of our visitors. I have no doubt that it is the pleasure and positive feedback of our visitors that makes the museum continue to grow, both with visitors and, I can add, exhibits. The Assegai project was in many ways, as it is more than just a public, was unique in many ways, as it was more than just a public-private partnership, having a substantial civic contribution as well. This was ultimately made possible by the positive can-do attitude of the South African Navy and Armscor Dockyard, the dogged determination of the Naval Heritage Trust and the volunteers, and the generosity of faith of the City of Cape Town and over 200 individual donors. They say that when the stars are aligned, things work. These were the stars that were all in alignment. Hopefully we can be an example for future heritage projects in the South African Defence Force. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral, for a very enlightening presentation and a very good example of what public-private partnership is and how dedicated people are, especially former soldiers and people that have been associated with the Defence Force, in sustaining military heritage. It is an example as well that we as serving soldiers and retired soldiers can make a difference to leave a legacy of military heritage to the next generation. I know I have 2 more speakers, but we also have a gala evening tonight, and the 2 speakers have indicated that they are willing to present tomorrow. Therefore, we will close the proceedings now with the Chief's blessing. Chief Logistics, if you... Admiral says yes, this is right. We can close early, which gives us time now to prepare this venue for the gala evening tonight. And you as participants can then explore the castle. I believe at 5 o'clock, am I right there, 5 o'clock? There will be tour guides available to show you the various parts of the castle, so that you can then at least be in the area for the gala evening tonight. Chief Logistics Admiral, is there anything you would like to add? Okay, then I can ask the RSM, is RSM available? Sergeant Major? Okay, he's coming. Okay, we're closing the session. We will have questions of these presentations. The question session will be tomorrow when we resume this session tomorrow. Thank you.